Dr. Jin walked into his lab that Tuesday morning just like any other day. His coffee was still hot and he expected another boring day of looking at space signals. He had no idea this day would change everything. "Min, come look at this," Jin called to his research partner. Min hurried over, pushing her glasses up her nose. The computer screen showed something impossible. Electromagnetic readings coming from empty space above Earth. "That can't be right," Min said, checking the instruments. They'd been tracking these weird signals for weeks now. At first, they thought, it was just equipment problems. But the signals kept coming back, always in the same pattern. Jin leaned back in his chair. "It's like something is watching us from out there." Min felt a chill run down her spine. "But there's nothing there. We've checked with every telescope." For months, Jin's team worked in secret. They couldn't tell anyone about their discovery. Who would believe them? Space signals from invisible sources. It sounded like science fiction. Dr. Ha, their communications expert, joined them. She was the one who first noticed the patterns weren't random. "These signals have intelligence behind them," she said. "Someone or something is deliberately sending them." Jin made a decision that would haunt him forever. Let's try talking back. They spent weeks preparing a message. Nothing threatening, nothing complex. Just a simple greeting that showed Earth had intelligent life. Jin's hands shook as he sent the signal into space. The response came faster than anyone expected, but it didn't come from the Watchers. Min screamed when the first ship appeared. One moment, empty space. The next, a massive vessel floated above Earth. Its hull was like liquid metal, constantly shifting and changing. "Sir," Ha whispered into her radio, "we have a problem." More ships appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. They materialized out of thin air, their cloaking technology far beyond anything humans had imagined. The vessels were sleek, beautiful, and terrifying. Why, no human technology looked like this. Jin's coffee cup hit the floor, shattering. On every screen in the lab, the same message appeared in perfect Korean. "We have kept watch. Now you must prepare." Across the world, every satellite, every radio, every communication device carried the same message. The Watchers, the Keepers, as they called themselves, had been secretly observing Earth for decades. But their message wasn't the scariest part. The scary part was why they finally revealed themselves. "The Devourers are coming," their next message read. "We can hide you no longer." In Seoul, President Yoon watched the skies with growing dread. Military bases worldwide went on highest alert. Stock markets crashed. People flooded into streets pointing at the sky where alien ships now hovered openly. Jin wished he'd never sent that signal. His team had triggered something awful. The Keepers explained that Earth had unknowingly attracted the attention of something much worse. Beings that traveled from star to star, consuming everything in their path. For years, the Keepers had used their advanced technology to hide Earth's radio signals to make humanity invisible to the cosmic predators. But human technology had grown too advanced to hide anymore. The Devourers had noticed Earth. Min couldn't stop shaking. "How long do we have?" The answer came back coldly. 6 months. The world that night was different from the day before. Children pointed at the strange ships. Religious leaders declared it the end times. Scientists worked frantically to understand the new reality. Jin barely slept. He kept thinking about that first signal he sent. If only he'd been more careful. If only he'd waited. But Ha reminded him of something important. "They were already watching. We didn't cause this. We just learned about it." The Keepers shared more terrible knowledge. The Devourers weren't just invaders. They were harvesters. They stripped planets of all resources, technology, and life. They'd already consumed thousands of worlds. Earth would be next. In emergency meetings worldwide, leaders faced an impossible question. How do you fight beings with technology thousands of years more advanced than yours? The answer came from the Keepers themselves. They offered humanity a chance: forbidden knowledge, dangerous weapons, the kind of technology that could level playing fields. But there would be a price. The Keepers had one rule: they never interfered directly. They watched, They warned, but they didn't fight. They could teach, but humans would have to do the actual fighting. As the days passed, more keeper ships appeared. They weren't just observers anymore. They were teachers, preparing humanity for the coming war. Jin looked at the star-filled sky and wondered if humans were ready for what was coming. The universe was much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And now there was no going back. The countdown had begun. 6 months to prepare for a war against beings who destroyed civilizations for sport. 6 months to become something humanity had never been before. Warriors. President Yoon had never imagined anything like this in his worst nightmares. 3 days had passed since the keepers revealed themselves, and the Blue House was in complete chaos. World leaders were calling every hour, their voices filled with panic. Day, the president's most trusted advisor, burst into the meeting room. "Sir, they want to meet. The keepers." Within hours, representatives from every major nation arrived. In Seoul, the Americans, Russians, Chinese, Europeans, Indians, everyone came. Su, the defense minister, had never seen such cooperation between nations that usually hated each other. The meeting took place in an old hangar at Gimpo Airport. As the leaders waited, a keeper ship descended silently. No engines, no noise. It simply floated down like a feather. 3 beings emerged. They looked almost human but moved in a way that seemed wrong. Too smooth, too graceful. Their eyes held wisdom that made everyone uncomfortable. These were the keepers. Through a translation device they spoke. Their leader, who called himself Vash, explained everything. "We are an alliance," Vash said. 13 species from across this galaxy. Our purpose is to watch, to monitor young civilizations like yours. President Park from North Korea, sitting next to his southern counterpart, leaned forward. "Why?" "Because the galaxy is dangerous," Vash replied. "There are forces that hunt species like hunters track animals. One such force is approaching Earth. Now." General Kim, head of South Korea's military, felt his stomach drop. The Devourers? Yes. They travel in massive fleets world to world. They consume everything: resources, technology, life itself. They've destroyed over 3,000 civilizations in this galaxy alone. The room fell silent. Representative Yang from China was the first to speak. "What do they want from us?" "Everything. Your planet's rare metals, your technology, your organic compounds. But most of all, they want your biological patterns, your DNA, your brain structures. They use what they harvest to make themselves stronger." Min, who had been invited as one of the discoverers, raised her hand. "How many are coming?" Vash paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Their fleet contains approximately 1 million ships. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy your largest cities." The translator almost broke under the weight of desperate voices. Politicians yelled, generals shouted orders, ambassadors demanded answers. Finally, President Yoon slammed his fist on the table. "Silence, we need to work together, not fight each other." Ha, sitting with the Korean delegation, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can you help us fight them?" "We cannot fight for you," Vash said sadly. "It is against our code. We watch and warn, but we do not interfere directly. However, we can teach you." "Teach us what?" asked the British PM. "How to survive. The weapons you'll need. The technology. That might save your world. But understand, this knowledge comes with great risk." Prime Minister Tanaka from Japan spoke up. "What kind of risk?" Vash's expression grew even more serious. "The weapons capable of fighting the Devourers could also destroy your world. They tap into forces your species doesn't understand. Dark. Matter, quantum entanglement, the fabric of space-time itself." General Rodriguez from Mexico pointed at the keeper ship. "Your technology is clearly advanced. Why can't you just destroy them?" "The Devourers have weapons that can unmake entire solar systems. They've been doing this for millions of years. Fighting them means accepting that your planet might be lost either way." President Chen from Taiwan asked, "How long do we have?" "Their scouts have already detected your world. The main fleet will arrive in 6 months. The hangar erupted again. 6 months to prepare for something impossible. How do you fight beings with technology millions of years more advanced? Through the chaos, Director Lee from South Korea's National Intelligence Service asked the smartest question. What do we need to do? Vash looked at each leader carefully. First, you must unite completely. Not just governments, but all of humanity. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every military asset must work together. And then, asked President Obama's representative, then we teach you to build weapons that shouldn't exist, planet killers, reality shapers, tools that could save your world or tear it apart. Swedish Prime Minister Larsson raised her hand. What happens if we refuse? The Devourers arrive regardless. But without our knowledge, without these weapons, humanity will die in hours instead of fighting for days. Jin, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. We started this by sending that signal. We have to finish it. Vash turned to him. Young human, you did not start this. The Devourers were already coming. We have been hiding your radio signals, your nuclear tests, your satellite transmissions for decades, but your technology grew too advanced to hide. This was inevitable. President Yoon stood up. What do we need to begin? Every nuclear weapon on Earth, every particle, accelerator, every military facility, and most importantly, you need to choose leaders who can unite your species for war. As the meeting ended, one terrible truth became clear. Humanity was about to change forever. The weapons they'd build would transform them into something else entirely. The countdown to war had begun. 6 months to prepare for the impossible. 6 months to build weapons capable of fighting gods. General Lee stood in the underground bunker, staring at blueprints that seemed to come from science fiction movies. 6 weeks had passed since the world united, and Project Titan was moving, faster than anyone thought possible. Show me the numbers again, Lee said to Dr. Su, the head of weapons development. Su pulled up the holographic display, technology they'd learned from the Keepers just days ago. We've converted 2,147 nuclear warheads into orbital platforms. Each platform can generate enough energy to power a small city. In bases around the world, the impossible was happening. At NASA, Dr. Park watched technicians modify particle accelerators into directed energy weapons. The large machines that once helped scientists understand atoms were now becoming planet killers. This is insane, Park whispered to her colleague, Jin, who was working on quantum mechanics applications. We're turning our greatest achievements into weapons. Jin nodded, exhaustion clear in his voice. The Keepers say these weapons are nothing compared to what the Devourers have. We're building toys to fight nuclear bombs. Meanwhile, at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Colonel Min supervised the strangest military unit ever assembled. Scientists worked alongside Navy SEALs. Korean engineers talked with Russian nuclear physicists. Chinese quantum researchers shared coffee with Australian special forces. Sir, Lieutenant Ha called out, the biological warfare team has finished the first prototype. Min walked over to see Dr. Su holding a small device that looked like a normal smartphone. This contains a virus that attacks at the quantum level, Su explained. The Keepers taught us how to make diseases that can affect beings from other dimensions. In Switzerland, at the CERN facility, the largest particle accelerator on Earth was getting a complete redesign. Engineer Kim watched as Keeper advisors showed human technicians how to create artificial black holes. Are we sure this is safe? Kim asked the Keeper named Zephyr. Nothing about this war is safe, Zephyr replied in perfect Korean. These weapons can tear holes in space-time itself. One mistake could collapse your solar system. President Yoon received daily reports that grew more terrifying each time. In Russia, they were building weapons that could redirect the sun's energy into focused beams. In Brazil, scientists created viruses that could rewrite DNA in seconds. In Japan, engineers worked on devices that could freeze time in small areas. The most dangerous project was in Antarctica. There, in a secret facility, Dr. Chang led a team building a weapon the Keepers called the Reality Anchor. It basically tells the universe what's real and what isn't, Chang explained to the visiting delegation. If we fire this at enemy ships, we can make them simply stop existing. But building these weapons came with prices. Workers exposed to exotic matter began changing. Some developed abilities to see through solid objects. Others could move small items without touching them. A few started hearing voices from other dimensions. Dr. Lee, the project's head psychiatrist, was overwhelmed. We have over 200 cases of what we're calling quantum exposure syndrome. People are changing in ways we don't understand. Are they dangerous? Asked General Kim. Not yet, but some can now see colors that don't exist. Others claim they can feel gravity like a physical force. We're changing whether we want to or not. In orbit, construction of the weapon platforms continued. Astronaut Day looked out at Earth while assembling a quantum torpedo launcher. Home looked so peaceful from up here, but humanity was racing against time. Contact from Mars Station. His partner Min announced. They've successfully tested the planet mover. Day's hands stopped working. They moved Mars? Just a few inches, but it worked. We can literally change where planets are. Back on Earth, the keepers grew more worried each day. Vash spoke privately with President Yoon about his concerns. Your species learns quickly, Vash said. Too quickly. In 6 months, you've developed weapons that took us thousands of years to create safely. Will they work against the Devourers? Yoon asked. Yes, but the cost. Humans aren't ready for this power. Some of your weapons could destroy the galaxy if used incorrectly. In underground tunnels, soldiers trained with equipment that bent the laws of physics. Sergeant Park learned to fire bullets that could travel through walls. Private Sue wore armor that made her nearly invisible to reality itself. The psychological cost was enormous. Dr. Han, a therapist working with the weapons teams, filed disturbing reports. Soldiers are having nightmares about things that haven't happened yet. Scientists are seeing the underlying structure of reality and going insane. Yet humanity pressed on. They had no choice. In Kenya, teams worked on biological weapons that could evolve while fighting. In Canada, they built machines that could create pocket dimensions for hiding. In India, scientists learned to weaponize prayers and thoughts themselves. The world's children no longer played war games. They played hide from the Devourers and build the ultimate weapon. Even kids understood that everything was different. Now Lee looked at the reports, at images of weapons that shouldn't exist, at humans who were no longer fully human. No, he said honestly. But we're as ready as we can be without destroying ourselves first. The arsenal had awakened. Earth was armed with the power of gods. Now they had to hope they could control what they'd created long enough to use it. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of Earth's first space fortress, watching the outer solar system through screens that showed more than normal eyes could see. 6 months of impossible work had led to this moment. The Devourers were coming. Contact on sensors, reported Lieutenant Ha. Multiple signatures, distance. Impossible, sir. They're everywhere. The Devourer fleet didn't arrive like ships in movies. They came like a shadow falling across the stars. One moment space was empty. The next it was full of darkness. Ships the size of moons, creatures made of metal and something worse. Dr. Sue, monitoring from Earth's command center, felt her heart stop. There are millions of them. The sensors can't count that high. General Park held his breath as the first enemy vessel became fully visible. It looked like a living thing. Dark, twisted, metal that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Smaller craft swarmed around it like angry insects. Begin Phase 1, Admiral Kim ordered. The first weapons to fire were the orbital platforms. Thousands of them, built from humanity's nuclear arsenal, unleashed energy beams that could melt cities. The beams hit the nearest Devourer ship. Nothing happened. The ship absorbed the energy like a sponge soaking up water. Sir, Communications Officer Min announced from Earth, the enemy is responding. The Devourer ship fired back. A single pulse of dark energy raced across space. When it hit Pluto, the dwarf planet simply disappeared. Not destroyed, erased from existence. President Yoon and the world leaders watched in horror from the command bunker in Seoul. Move to Phase 2, Yoon ordered. Deep in space, Captain Day piloted one of Earth's new quantum destroyers toward the enemy fleet. These ships could travel through folded space, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Firing. Quantum torpedoes, Day announced. The torpedoes hit 3 Devourer ships simultaneously, Reality bent around the impact points. For a moment, those ships existed in two places at once, then collapsed into nothing. Direct hits. Engineer Cho cheered from his station, but the celebration ended quickly. The Devourer fleet began moving. As they moved, space itself seemed to tear. They weren't just flying, they were changing how distance worked. On Mars, Dr. Jin watched the planet mover weapon charge up. The device was massive, taking up most of the planet's surface. Planet. Displacement in 3, 2, 1. Mars jumped. The entire planet moved, leaving its orbit and floating toward Jupiter. Earth had turned a world into a shield. The Devourers responded by doing something impossible. They grabbed the sun. Not with ships, not with weapons, but with will itself. The star began moving toward them. "They're stealing our sun," screamed every news reporter on Earth. In the secret Antarctic facility, Dr. Chang fired the reality anchor. The weapon told the universe that the moving sun wasn't real. For 30 seconds, it worked. The sun stopped moving. Then the Devourers broke the weapon by simply deciding it didn't exist. The war escalated beyond anything humans had imagined. Devourer ships created artificial gravity wells that crushed Earth's space fortresses. Human forces responded by launching artificial black holes like bullets. Sergeant Park led a squad of enhanced soldiers on a boarding mission impossible 20 years ago. They teleported inside a Devourer ship, their modified bodies allowing them to exist in the alien environment. "This place isn't made of normal matter," Park reported over the radio. "The walls are thinking. They're alive." As his squad fought creatures that looked like nightmares given form, the battle around Earth grew desperate. The Devourers began eating space itself. Areas they touched simply ceased to be. Admiral Kim made the hardest decision of his life. Release the dimension bombs. Across the solar system, humanity's most dangerous weapons activated. They opened holes in reality, letting in forces from other universes. The battle was no longer happening in just one dimension. Lieutenant Ha watched, her instruments go crazy. "Sir, we're fighting in 12 different realities at once. The enemy exists in all of them. In the parallel dimensions, Earth's enhanced soldiers fought versions of the same battle. In one dimension, humans were made of light. In another, the war was fought with music and colors. General Lee coordinated from Earth as planets became weapons. Mercury was fired like a bullet at a Devourer mothership. Venus was turned into a bomb that made new stars when it exploded. The Devourers fought back by breeding planets. They created worlds full of weapons, then sent them to fight Earth's remaining forces. Dr. Min, working with a team of quantum physicists, noticed something strange. The enemy is following patterns. They're not creative fighters. This observation led to humanity's breakthrough. The Devourers were powerful, but they fought like machines. They followed rules, and rules could be bent. Commander Su led the final attack. Using weapons that combined human creativity with Keeper technology, her fleet didn't fight the Devourers. They convinced space itself that the Devourers didn't belong. The largest enemy ship began to fade. Its existence became questionable. As it questioned its own reality, other Devourer vessels started having the same problem. "It's working," breathed Captain Cho. "They're forgetting how to exist." The final moment came when humanity used their most human weapon: imagination. Every person on Earth focused on the same thought: the Devourers don't belong here. With billions of minds thinking the same thing, reality listened. The enemy fleet began to dissolve, not destroyed, not defeated, but simply rejected by existence itself. As the last Devourer ship faded from view, a cheer went up across multiple dimensions. Humanity had won the impossible war, but victory came with a price no one had expected. The weapons had changed everything: space, time, and humanity itself. The silence after the battle felt strange. Admiral Kim floated in his command ship, watching the empty space where the Devourer fleet had been moments before. The victory celebrations had lasted only minutes before everyone realized the true cost of their survival. Dr. Na was the first to notice the changes. She worked at the medical facility in Seoul, treating soldiers who had returned from the war. "President Yoon," she said over the emergency broadcast, "we need to talk immediately." The soldiers weren't the same. Captain Day, who had led the quantum destroyer missions, could now see through walls. His eyes had changed color, becoming silver like liquid metal. When he tried to sleep, he saw things that hadn't happened yet. "It's not just vision," Day explained to Dr. Na. "I can feel gravity. I can touch time. Sometimes I forget which dimension I'm in." Across Earth, similar changes appeared everywhere. Workers who had built the reality weapons developed new abilities. Engineer Cho could fix broken machines just by thinking about them. Lieutenant Ha heard radio signals from aliens in distant galaxies. Sergeant Park could walk through walls when she concentrated. Children born during the war came out different. They could fly without wings. They spoke in colors. Some breathed in water like air. These children weren't sick or wrong. They were evolved. "We're becoming something new," Dr. Su reported to the Emergency Council. "The exotic matter, the quantum exposure, the reality weapons. They've changed us at the DNA level. We're not fully human anymore." The Keepers, who had stayed to help with the war, watched these changes with concern. Vash met with President Yoon in the old Blue House, which had been rebuilt after a devourer weapon accidentally erased the original building. "Your species faced a choice," Vash explained. "Die as humans or survive as something else. You chose survival." President Yoon looked out the window at Seoul. The city looked normal from a distance, but up close everything was different. Buildings repaired themselves. Trees grew in impossible patterns. Some people walked in the air like it was solid ground. "What are we becoming?" Yoon asked. "That depends entirely on you," Vash replied. "Power like this can create paradise or destroy everything. Your weapons didn't just save you. They made you into potential gods. The solar system itself had changed. Jupiter now orbited closer to Earth, its gravity altered by the reality weapons. Mars hung in space between dimensions, sometimes visible, sometimes not. The sun burned differently, its light carrying new types of energy that fueled human evolution. Dr. Chang returned from Antarctica with disturbing news. The reality anchor is still active. It's rewriting the laws of physics in a 100-mile radius. Inside that zone, thoughts become real. We need to shut it down before someone thinks something dangerous. But shutting down the weapons proved impossible. They had become part of reality itself. Earth was now a fortress that existed in multiple dimensions. The planet could defend itself automatically, sensing threats across time and space. Some humans couldn't handle the changes. Dr. Lee, the psychiatrist, dealt with increasing cases of reality adjustment disorder. People who could suddenly see every possible future went insane. Others who could hear thoughts from every nearby person begged for the noise to stop. "We need to help them adapt," Min suggested. She now led a team of enhanced humans who helped others control their new abilities. These powers aren't a curse, they're evolution. The world governments struggled to maintain order. How do you police people who can teleport? How do you tax someone who can create gold from air? President Chen from China called an emergency meeting of all enhanced leaders. "We need new rules for a new humanity," Chen declared. His own enhancement allowed him to see the truth in people's minds, making lies impossible in his presence. Some nations tried to go back to the old ways. They banned the use of enhanced abilities, arrested people for being different. This only led to conflicts. Enhanced humans couldn't simply turn off their new nature. The children were the key to the future. They adapted to their abilities, like learning to walk. Young people like 12-year-old Han, who could exist in 3 dimensions at once, became teachers for confused adults. "It's not scary," Han told frightened parents at a public meeting. "You just have to accept what you are now." Artists created works impossible before the war. Musicians composed songs in light and shadow. Writers told stories that happened in readers' dreams. Architects built buildings that were bigger inside than outside, but the biggest change was in how humans saw themselves. They were no longer alone in the universe. They were no longer weak. The war had forced them to evolve, and there was no going back. 6 months after victory, the Keepers prepared to leave. They had stayed longer than ever before with any species. Vash gave Earth a final warning. You now possess weapons that could unmake galaxies. You've evolved beyond our understanding. The choice is yours. Use this power to protect the galaxy, or become what the Devourers were. As the Keeper ships departed, humanity faced its future. They were no longer human, not exactly. They were something new, something powerful, something that could create or destroy on a cosmic scale. President Yoon made a final address to the changed world. We survived the impossible. We won a war against gods. Now we must decide what kind of gods we want to be. Earth hung in space, surrounded by its reality-warped defenses, home to a species that had transcended its origins. The price of survival was becoming something unimaginable. But humanity had always been good at imagination, and now they had the power to make any dream real.